6th of January 2023. This is one of those what a fuck moment. Skidmarks, and it is about the Donbass. The past, I would say 3 weeks, that Ukrainian Zazis has been bombing the hell out of Donetsk city, the city center and the suburbs, and they are shooting civilian buildings and they're shooting civilians, and they are killing a lot of people, they're destroying a lot of property, and yet the West, as is usual, is quiet about that. And that leads me to my position that the Western taxpayers, the Western people actually, are happy with the fact that their governments are financing this mass killing of civilians. And not a single Western newspaper or news station or news outlet ever criticizes the Zelensky regime about this. And then Ursula von der Crazy has got the audacity to set up a tribunal to try the Russians for war crimes. What is this? What is this other than a war crime? Plus, they finance it. The whole of Europe and the US and Canada and the UK are financing this. But let's not forget, the UK and NATO and France are involved in killing thousands of people in Yemen as we are speaking now. There are thousands of people dying of hunger. They are denied medicine because the powerful British fleet is blockading the harbours. That fucking British fleet can't even keep rubber ducks away from England, but they're very effective in keeping medicine away from Yemen. But let me not go there. I'm going to start this off with this post by Eva Bartlett. Friend in Donetsk shared these images with me, telling me that this was right next to the flat he was renting. It's also 2 minutes from the flat that I've rented the past few times I've gone there. It's an entirely residential area, one of which came under heavy Ukrainian fire when Ukraine fired 40 grads into the city center this morning. In June, Ukrainian shelling of the same district destroyed a school and the apartment of a 75-year-old woman I met in November. Now, this is what is going on in Donetsk, and those people have got to live with it every day of their life. I'm going to show you now a short clip of a few images. I selected these images and explicitly avoided the gory images of the people that have been blown to pieces. But just remember, as you look at these images, there are people behind those broken windows, there are people in those bombed buildings, and in many instances, children are maimed and killed. The thing that inspired me to do this skidmark was on this incident. A Russian politician and former chief of Roscosmos, Rogozin, who was wounded in Donbass while celebrating his birthday in a restaurant, has sent the covered shrapnel from the Caesar howitzer used by Kiev to the French ambassador to the Russian Federation. Here is the accompanying letter. Please give the shrapnel cut by surgeons from my spine to President Emmanuel Macron, and also tell him that no one will escape responsibility for the war crimes of France, the USA, the UK, Germany and other NATO countries in Donbass. Now that is just the excerpt. I'm going to handle now the full letter. Dmitry Rogozin sent a letter to the French ambassador with a fragment of the shell of the French howitzer Caesar. Official Paris betrayed the cause of the Great de Gaulle and became one of the most bloodthirsty states in Europe. Your country has submitted to the dictates of Washington and has become a puppet state in the style of the Vichy government, serving the basest instincts of the Nazis. Recently, as a result of a violent terrorist act in Donetsk, I was seriously injured. In this envelope, along with my letter, you see a fragment from a shell fired by the French 155mm Caesar self-propelled artillery mount. It pierced my right shoulder and stuck in the 5th vertical vertebrae, just a millimeter away from killing me or rendering me immobile. This French howitzer shell killed 2 of my young friends, leaving their wives as widows and their children as orphans. These guys accompanied us on a trip to Baikonur. You shook hands with them. Now they are killed by weapons supplied to Ukraine by your country. You probably know how many civilians were killed in Donetsk and the frontline cities of Novorossiya by French weapons and French mercenaries. There are hundreds of people, including children. I hope you understand the measure of your personal responsibility for these murders, and I ask you to hand over the fragment cut by surgeons from my spine to the French President Emmanuel Macron, and also tell him that no one will escape responsibility for the war crimes of France, the US, Britain, Germany and other NATO countries in the Donbass. All our victims are on your conscience, as well as the appearance of fascist Ukraine on the map of Europe is also on your conscience. Now, I don't know if Macron is going to pay attention to this or what, but the reality is this. The West are financing and providing the equipment to commit war crimes. That make them part of the criminals. And I don't know when will the population of Europe realize that they are not living in independent countries. Their countries are under full control of the neocons sitting in the shithouse in Washington. And Europe is being led down a road that is going to lead them into utter poverty and suffering. But they are allowing that leadership to do that. Not one of those EU presidents or prime ministers can make a decision for their country without getting permission from Washington. Somebody mentioned early this morning to me that isn't it a case that America is actively allowing Europe to be disarmed by sending all those armaments and ammunition to Donbass, up to Ukraine, in order for America to take Europe over. And I have to say, it can look like that, but the reality is that America don't need to take Europe over. They already got Europe under control, under full control, their full control. There's not a European nation that has got the authority to make decisions for their own nations. The only nation that I see that acts for their national interest is Hungary, and lately Serbia as well. Hungary specifically, are not playing those games, and they are looking out for the interest of the Hungarians. But the West is financing the Zazis in the Ukraine, and I cannot understand how people expect the Russians to accept the fact that a major Zazi nest is being built on their borders. It cannot, it will never work. And these Zazis, they have showed once what they can do to Europe. They're going to do it again. And again, the only nation that can stop them is the Russians. But will the Russians aid Europe this time? I don't think so. I think Europe is on their own now. They are being de-industrialized and Europe is collapsing economically. And the Americans is making a shithouse full of money out of that. The only winner so far is the Americans. Think about that. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. And especially share it to Twitter if you are a Twitter user. Thank you.